So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Live Talk and with Becky Chernek. And boy, let me tell you, I have for 2023 an amazing featured guest speaker with us tonight, Stephan Woessner. And boy, I am going to let him fill you in on his terrific background. But he has worked with OEMs, he has worked in retail, and he certainly knows his stuff when it comes to EV and technology. And I have got the best here tonight with us. But before we get into this conversation, for you guys that are new to this channel, I'm Becky Chernek, like I said, and I have been providing the very best in finance and insurance training for auto dealers throughout the USA and also Canada since 2001. And not just F&I, right? Not just F&I. It's from the time that customer touches down on that dealership website, working with business development center people, to working with sales strategy, sales people, to the desk, working with the desk managers, simultaneously desking those deals with the sales associates, to finalizing the transaction with a designated F&I manager or even that single point sales associate. But one thing I can promise my dealers is this, is I get impact, a higher impact that sticks. Okay. So if you guys are listening up, we're going live on YouTube. And if you happen to like what we're talking about, if you do a couple things, first of all, like us. And also, if you wouldn't mind, hit that subscribe button and please share. We're also going live on Facebook and two of my favorite groups, F&I Today with Becky Chernek and also F&I on the Edge. And I've got some really terrific, great guys and gals in those groups who have terrific experience in automotive retail. Be happy to help you no matter where you are in your automotive career. And we are going live on LinkedIn as well as Twitter. So welcome, Stephan. I am so glad to have you on with me tonight as our featured guest. And for our viewers and dealers, if you wouldn't mind, kind of go over a brief background, who you are, what you've been doing, and why you do what you do.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, I've been in the automotive industry for probably the last 40 years. I spent about 34 years with Ford Motor Company in various assignments around the country at various levels in the company. And then for the last 5 or 6 years, I've basically done consulting. So the Blue Oceans Consulting, talk to dealers, working out different things like process mapping, but more importantly, trying to figure out how to set themselves up for the future. When you look at what's happening in the business, the car business is interesting in the sense that it's always changing. It's always been changing. What's happened now is that acceleration of change has really made it challenging to make the adjustments that you need to make, to look at the things you need to look at. And when you're, if you look at dealerships, they're very good firefighters. They do a great job of that. The challenge is when you've got 4 or 5 fires going at the same time and things are changing on you very quickly, it makes it very, very hard to do that. So you're putting out a fire in sales and your service department's burning down. So what I've tried to do is basically work with them and look at it through the lens of, all right, have a strategic view, so have an understanding of what's happening in the business, but more importantly, look at your market and your dealership and your customers. And how do you connect to them? How do you make it as seamless as possible for them to do business with you? And the easier it is for them to do business with you, the more relevant you are in their world. And so the more likely you'll be able to survive whatever the changes are that are coming, because your customers will stick with you instead of shifting for various reasons. And the one thing that's pretty clear going forward is customers are going to have a lot of choices. They're going to have a lot more choices. And I think the fact that they have a relationship with you gives you an edge in this battle, but recognize that if you don't take care of that relationship, if you don't work on that, if you don't make sure that you've got the right leadership team, the right people, a lot of these things in place, it's very easy to lose that. And that is something that is not a would like to have, in the future, that's going to be a must-have. You must have that connection in your organization. In the past, yes, it helped boost your business. It was a nice to have, but you know what? A lot of stores survived without it. And nowadays, it's going to be very difficult to do that because the processes themselves are going to be controlled by dealers. So I've worked with dealers doing that for the last 4 or 5 years. And yeah, other than that, I got my pilot's license and had a little bit of fun too.
Well, we have a couple folks on right now that are saying hello. First, Chris Kerr is here. Hey, Chris, I'm so glad you're able to make it on tonight. And I'm sure you have some questions for us as well. Joshua, awesome. I'm so glad you're able to make it on tonight. I know you are, oh gosh, you talk about innovative. Joshua is definitely innovative. He and I are kind of on the same page when it comes to refinancing and different options that might be available for our customers. Tony Owens, hey, you got to know Tony Owens. Tony Owens is with Germain Automotive Group, and I got to tell you, from my perspective, one of the almost the best automotive groups in the country. Thank you, Tony, for being on tonight. You're amazing kind of guy. And then we've got, yeah, great to see you as well, Chris. Thank you so much for being on. Thank you for sharing, Becky, always evolving and learning. I don't know who you are, but if you want to share who you are, that'd be great. It shows up as Facebook user. Sorry, guys. But it's a pleasure to have Stephan Woessner on with us tonight. He is amazing. You're going to love this conversation. And being proactive versus reactive. Oh, I'm telling you, we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And then we have Chris. Follow-up has always been key in any industry, but they seem to have forgotten this process during COVID. Digital retailing, and as Stephan said, cultivate the relationship. So, amen to that. I absolutely want to go there because I think we were more open-minded during this COVID, right? And to what it was going to take to be able to engage with our customers and do business the way that, I mean, we didn't normally do business. And how do we do that best? And more and more dealers were looking at digital retailing and they were like, hey, we have some sort of a software somewhere that maybe we can engage with our customers. How does this whole thing work? But now it kind of seems that, I don't know, some of the dealers are like forgetting about all that. And maybe they're back to pre-COVID days. What are your thoughts on that? And then I want to talk a little bit more too on the EV and subscription service. Where are we at? Where's the infrastructure for all that? And let's get into this technology, Stephan.
Okay, well, I mean, I would say one of the things that COVID did more than anything else is it accelerated the change. A lot of the changes that people are talking about now were changes that were underway. And the interesting thing, across the dealer body, you had various levels of it. So some people were way ahead, some people had a little ways to go. But what you found with COVID was all of a sudden, everybody needed that channel. Everybody needed to open that channel to the customers because that was really the only way to connect with them at that time. And so the acceleration of that and the acceleration of all the various changes. The other thing that happened that I think was a major shift is, and nobody would have predicted this, but for the first time ever, all dealerships, all manufacturers were impacted the same way, and every dealer's lot was empty. That hasn't happened since the car business started. So there's never been anything like that. And I think, like I said, the dealers are very good firefighters. They're very good at handling changes, and they made a lot of changes and a lot of shifts. What they're going to find as you go forward is that a lot of those changes customers liked, and they want to keep doing them. So I would say it's less about going back to what you were doing and more about looking at your business, looking at your own market, and figuring out, okay, what worked from what I changed, what didn't work, what do I need to adjust to, and how can I make it a more seamless process with the customer? And the other thing you'll see is that from an OEM standpoint, having all the cars gone gave them in many ways an opportunity to hit the reset button on a lot of things. And in many cases, their biggest concern is the variability between dealerships in terms of how things are executed. Some do a fantastic job, some don't do as well. It's that variability that stresses out the OEMs many times. And it is a situation where they're looking at connecting with the customer to be able to stabilize that relationship with them. But I don't believe, and this is just my take, I don't believe they're looking to replace the dealer with a machine or anything. I think, having the dealer network is a valuable asset to them, and they want to keep that. But what they do want to do is figure out how to make it more consistent, how to make it more customer centric, and how to have this change and these changes be more sustainable and more consistent. And I think that's primarily what they're looking at. And when you talked about EVs, that's going to be the platform that allows them essentially to turn the car from what it is today, which is a glorified cell phone, into a computer. And it will be able to do pretty much everything you can do on a computer, you'll be able to do in your car. And a number of other things, which will be interesting. And that leads into the topic you talked about before, which was the subscription model that's come up. And that's going to be something that I think dealerships need to have conversations with the OEMs about. And I know that at NADA, there was a lot of conversation around that. I think that's something that they really need to work out now. I don't think that it's going to happen now. In other words, it's not going to happen overnight. But I do think now's the time to work out how you see that evolving, how the OEMs see that evolving in the future, and have that conversation now. Do the preparation now while you have the time, because down the road, once the car becomes a computer, it'll be there, and you really need to think about it differently. You need to react differently to it, and it's not going to happen the same everywhere. It's not going to be instantly snap your fingers and everything's going to change, but it's going to change, and it's going to change around the country.
Right. So we were talking about personnel, we were talking about training, and we were talking about, do we have the right people in the right seat with the right type of training, with the right kind of processes, with the right digital technology, if you will. And I think it really does start with having that mindset, that critical thinking, if you will. What does it take? Because I can't imagine. I don't know where EV is going to be in the next 3 to 5 years. Where is it going to be? And if we're going there, do we have the right people? Do we have the right training? Do we have the right processes? And I think you're talking about the technology as well, meaning technology processes in place to support it.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at it from a dealership perspective, you need to start with your leadership team, and do that now, because that's the group that will be leading your entire organization into the future. Do you have the right people on it? Do they have the right experience? Is there some leadership training? Is there something else that they need to get? But to build that organization up so that it is something that can really accomplish two things for you. One, lead your people into the kind of changes that are coming. But two, to be a filter for you as a dealer with all these things coming at you. It would be great to have a single group that you could run these things through. And their main focus should be, is this the right thing for us now, here, today, for our customers or not? If it is, great. Let's activate it. Let's figure out how to make it work. Let's do it, and let's deliver it to our customers. If it isn't, it can go on hold until it matters in your area. Now, it may be something that's really big in California, but if you're not in California, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So concentrate on your leadership team, get that right. And many guys are fortunate to have a good leadership team. So they're part of the way there. And then the next thing I would say is start looking at your systems, start making them more customer centric and customer friendly. And that means all of the systems that you have. Do they connect to one another? Do they make sense? Do they work together? And then you need to start to look down further in the organization and reskill and upskill people and give them the opportunity to be part of the future. And I think many of them have the skills to do that. And then lastly, you start to look at your digital capability. And if you can put those four things in order, the first one doesn't really require you to spend a whole lot of money or do anything fantastic. It's just start to evaluate these things and then move on and move on and move on. And if you do that, I think over the next 3 to 5 years, you've got a window to set yourself up to be ready to handle what your customers need you to handle for them. And
So
that's the way
Stephan,
you need to think about it.
here's the thing. I didn't mean to cut you off. So sorry.
No, that's
But
fine.
so the thing is that we have a lot of managers in the industry. I know that, if this is going live in the F&I Today group as well, with Becky Chernek, as well as F&I on the Edge, we have F&I people, we have managers saying, this technology is all about replacing me. We have many technology providers that are saying, well, we're talking single point sales associates or a single point of contact. We don't need F&I people, or we're going to maybe even repurpose F&I people. This whole deal is going to change. And they're going, well, hold up for a minute. How in the world do you expect dealership people to support the technology if they think for one iota they're going to replace me? What do you say to that?
Well, I would say that it's highly unlikely that technology in and of itself is going to replace you. It just won't. There's virtually no job that's 100% able to be replaced by technology. And especially in a retail environment like car dealerships, I mean, the people element is very, very important. And you're not going to get to a point where everything's automated. It's all a kiosk. It's that's just my personal belief. I don't believe that will be the case. I do think though that the challenge will be to get yourself, if you're in a dealership, get yourself very comfortable and very understanding of the technology that the dealership has. And when new technology comes on, understand what its capabilities are and how it will improve you. Because ultimately, you're not going to get replaced by a computer. You're going to get replaced by somebody who works really, really well with a computer as a partner. At the end of the day, that computer is going to make that other person faster, more accurate, free up their time, allow them time to have more face time with the customer instead of sitting there tacking away on their computer. And I think that's something that you need to be conscious of, because when people come into a dealership, in many cases, it's a high stress situation for them. It's a big expense when you're buying a car, when you're servicing a car. There's all kinds of your life that's disrupted. Having somebody that you trust, somebody that you can talk to, somebody that can empathize with you and will spend the time to do that is far more important than the technology. But what's required is the technology needs to run a lot of these things. You need to set up the RO. You need to do the F&I. You need to do all of these things.
Let's just talk to, I know you and I had the same conversation, or darn pretty close, with Brian Kramer. And I'm sure he won't mind me talking a little bit about what he was able to implement at his dealership. And you said he took advantage of a good situation. He took advantage of a time when all bets were off, right? And nobody was coming. I mean, little to no one was coming into a dealership because of COVID. So he took an opportunity to roll up his sleeves to figure out, how can we make our process better? And from there, he made changes to that process. And in turn, by doing that, he frustrated a lot of people in the dealership. Let's not kid ourselves. I'm sure some of the sales managers were frustrated. Salespeople were frustrated. Definitely F&I. What are you doing? What do you think about you're changing my world? What do you mean taking a jet printer out of my office? I am used to utilizing that jet printer, and now you're taking it and throwing it out of my office. How am I supposed to operate like this? And well, come to find out what happened.
A lot of things got better and it got easier, and it actually improved operations for the customer, for the employee, and for the dealership. And what he did was, quite honestly, he followed that adage of never let a good crisis go to waste.
Yeah.
He used that time. And I think a lot of dealerships did too. They made changes to their organizations, to their systems. The key now is to continue that process. Don't think, oh, hey, we're suddenly going to go back to where we were, because we're not. Okay, the OEMs are not going to go back to the way they were. It was a very, very expensive model for them and a very expensive model for the dealerships. So they're not planning to go back to that. But the key is, how do you set yourself up to best handle your customers? And I think, honestly, if you just take the time now to analyze these things, to take a look at it, it doesn't have to be me, but get an outside consultant to come in and give you a view, and they'll give you an outside view. It's not expensive. You don't have to do a lot. It's not big money that you're investing here. But what you are doing is starting the process that you're going to need to follow as you evolve into this thing, because there are going to be things that are going to come along that we haven't even thought of yet. Okay, we're not even talking about them yet. And when you talk about a car, and you talk about Tesla's now wanting to do more automation, more full automation on the car. I mean, I've asked this before. If a car can go get itself fixed, do you really care where it goes? I mean, very few people do. They care about the quality of the work. They care about the cost of it. And it would be great if another car came so I had transportation. But other than that, they don't really care, because they're not there. And that changes the dynamic. But how that evolves and how that happens, I don't know. My guess is that it will happen over time. More and more automation will come in. If you look at the speed of computers today and the ability to get information to the point of attack when and where it's needed, that is hugely powerful. And that makes possible a lot of things that 20 years ago weren't possible. So that's why we didn't do it in the car business, because it wasn't feasible. But now it is. And you have to be open to that, and you have to look to that. And that's why I say, if you get that leadership team to start to think and have them on a monthly basis look at, all right, strategically, where is the industry going? And then how do we fit into it? And how does that benefit our customers? If they can do that on a regular basis as just part of their regular thought process, there are so many things that they see on a day-to-day basis that can be changed, can be adjusted, can be made a little bit better, that a dealer is never going to see. And so, rely on that insight. And they, in turn, will rely on their teams to do the same thing, because service advisors are going to see stuff service managers don't. And they know what can make things easier for them. F&I people, they know what can make things easier and more friendly and more helpful and more beneficial to both the customer and the dealership. So, yeah.
Well, like what we talked about, it makes a lot of sense in that we have minimized a lot of the headaches. We have minimized CIT. We minimized the times that customers are coming back to recontract. So that way we are more focused on our customers at time of sale. And we're not having to wrestle with all these interruptions throughout the day, that we can be a lot more efficient. And I think you also talked about the fact that when you're more efficient, there's time to do other things, to make impact in other areas. I would like to say there's time to make an impact in after sale. It's time for F&I to make their way back in service. to learn service, to have a better understanding what's taking place in our service department, to have a better relationship when it comes to service and getting those products back in front of the customer after sale and building that after sale relationship. Just the other day, I will tell you, I'm writing this article, but here in the mail is this letter from Endurance, and Endurance is all about selling the customer the service contract or any other ancillary products they didn't take advantage of at time of sale. So I question, why isn't a dealer back in front of that customer? Why aren't we? Why are you letting your customer have access to another third-party provider outside of your control? It makes no sense to me.
Yeah,
But
well, a
with
lot
that
of
added
times,
time, we can do that.
well, a lot of times it's just that. It's the time. First of all, there is a challenge getting techs, getting service advisors, getting people, to come work at a dealership, regardless of the situation. But I do think that if you were to take the service advisors or you were to take the techs and say, hey, if I could free up 40% of your time, where else could you add value? Where else could you sell more or do more? And the same for the sales guys. And that in turn improves their income, because the more they can produce, the more they can generate, the more they make, the more the company makes. And a lot of that is just, how can I take out a lot of the busy work? You've got robotic process automation, machine learning, optical character recognition. A lot of these technologies, quite honestly, have been around for a while. What's happened lately, though, is the speed of the computer systems that operate them are far better and far more capable. And so leveraging some of these older concepts that now have greater performance can seriously reduce the amount of time that your employees spending doing something that is literally adding no value to your dealership. It's because they have to fill out the form, it has to be turned in a certain way, the company wants this, the government wants this, all of these things are required. They're not enjoying that. That's not benefiting anybody, but it has to be done. Well, why not let a computer do it and let the employee spend their time getting to know the customer? And who knows, if you're talking to someone in an F&I office and you take the time to get to know them, there may be things that come to mind based on what they're telling you about their lives. What could really help you? This or this or this or this. And the reason you would think of that is because you took the time to talk to them. And you had that time because you allowed the technology to do the busy work. And that's where I think a lot of guys need to start to adjust their thinking. But it's not easy. And I have a lot of respect for dealers. They have their livelihood and their lives and their families on the line. It isn't something that you take lightly. And they don't have a lot of at-bats. They just don't. They don't have billions of dollars sitting around to make these changes. But I do think that as time goes on, these changes and these adjustments that they can make are going to become much, much more necessary, much more of a requirement than it would like to have. And I think if they can start that process now, they will find that the vast majority of their employees are happy to come along for the ride and come along for the walk. And they too will find that, hey, guess what? I didn't really like doing all that grunt work. Now I can do something that's more interesting and that makes me and the company more money.
Well, anytime you have, you're up at bat, you really want to have the most, you want to be able to take advantage of that opportunity as much as you possibly can. And that's really what's happening here. What it's doing is, we talk about it, and but the reality of it is, it's that partnership with the technology that makes the impact. And
Yeah,
that's
well,
what
I
has
think
to integrate.
I heard a quote from Mike Cavanaugh recently in one of the Ted Ings presentations that I thought applies to this. And it's an old Toby Keith line that goes, "Hey, it's time for a little less talk and a lot more action." And that's
Yeah.
really what's required here. I mean, you can talk about it ad nauseum, but the fact is you have to do what Brian did take the actions. Go in and look at those operating systems and the processes in your dealership. Are they really happening the way you think they are? I think you'll be shocked to find out that a vast majority of them are not. And then the question becomes, why not? And is it possible to make them run more efficiently and more effectively by utilizing some technology that's available today that wasn't there 10 years ago? And those are the kind of decisions that you need to make as an owner, as a dealer. And then bring your employees along for the ride, because they're going to benefit by having your dealership perform better. And they're certainly going to benefit a lot more than if you go out of business and they're not working there anymore. So I think there's mutual benefit there. And yeah, it's time for a lot more action and a little less talk. So
a lot more action, right? It's, we're going to make mistakes. We're not perfect by any means, but I think the sooner that you can get on board and have a better understanding of what this does. I know that, when I process through this technology, a lot of misunderstanding. There's so much misunderstanding. And so when we have some of the objections that come up, are they really founded? What are they based on? Is this an assumption? Is it based on fact? Is it based on what your feelings are? So when you walk through that process and you're addressing and handling the objections as they come up, it's more of a fear factor more than anything else. And it's not a knowing. It's based on assumption. So when we can walk through the process and we have a better understanding of it, then our eyes are opened up to the opportunity that it presents. So the one thing that, I can relate to this as well, and I talk about this time and time again, is the experience that I had 25 years ago when we implemented menu selling in the AutoNation mega stores. And Stephen, everybody was like dumbfounded. And there were plenty of experts in the industry. Becky, there's no way you could be upfront and still be profitable. This is not going to happen. You're not going to be able to go out there in the middle of a showroom, at a kiosk in the middle of the showroom, presenting all your products. Customers understand the terms of the sale. They understand the base payment, and people are going to buy from you. Right. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to you got to get back in the box. It's not going to happen. But we proved otherwise. And we proved that you could be upfront and still be very profitable. So from the mega stores, you can do that in the mega stores, Becky, but try this on in the new car stores. Let me tell you, not going to happen. But we proved them wrong there as well. So here we are 25 years later, and we're talking about the same thing. We are talking about the same thing. How is it any different? From online to in dealership, to picking up where we left off, to reduce the freaking headache. Right? And allowing customers to feel that they're in control of the process, for crying out loud. How is that any different?
No, it isn't. The difference is the tools you have available to you now
Yay.
weren't available then. And I think there's another quote that I like from Stephen King, basically, that says, amateurs sit around and wait for inspiration. Yeah, the rest of us just get up and go to work. And I think right now is a time to get up, go to work, look at these processes, look at the systems, make sure your computer systems talk to each other, make sure it's a holistic system and not a patchwork quilt of technology crap. It needs to be stuff that makes things easier for your employees, easier for your customers. And then, like I said, if you start the process of educating with your leadership team, and then they in turn cascade it down to your employees, when the time comes to make a change or to make an adjustment, there's not going to be people sitting around shocked or surprised or amazed. Actually, there'll be people that'll be energized by the opportunity to make the change, because they'll be able to see how much easier it can make what they do and what they've historically spent their time on, and how much value added they can bring to the table. And I believe it's going to be a positive. And I think that, as I've said before, I don't think the OEMs are looking to replace dealerships with, automated kiosks. It's a big asset for manufacturers to have a dealer network and to have that close personal connection to the customers. What they're really looking for in a lot of this is more consistency of communication, more consistency of process. And quite honestly, for dealerships to succeed and survive in the future, they're going to need to do that anyways. So it once again, they shouldn't be at odds. One doesn't succeed without the other, and that's historically been true. So, work together, make it a team effort, and bring it along together. And I think the more you communicate with your employees, and the more you eliminate the lack of understanding, the less stress and the less fear comes into play. Because generally speaking, humans are all wired the same way. When we're encountering fear, we do one of two things: fight or flight. Everybody's programmed the same way, have been for 1 billion years. I mean, that hasn't changed. It's just, how do you react? How are you going to react to it? And if you eliminate that fear, then you don't have people running away and going to work somewhere else. And you also don't have people trying to fight you every step of the way. So take the time that you have to work at it and do what Brian did. Do the analysis, do the evaluation, have people come in to look at certain things and help you understand certain things and make sure that you've got the right track. But like I said, nothing can replace having a very good, capable leadership team, and especially knowing what skills you need to have on that team. And I would also say, just as a side thought, any systems that you have in the company, in the dealership, more than one person should know how to use it, because you need to have backup. There are way too many processes of one in a dealership where, oh yeah, Joe does all of that for us. Well, that's great, except Joe goes on vacation every now and again. And so nothing happens then.
Right.
So have a backup, have a partner system. None of this is rocket science. I don't think they're going to find it something that they've never thought of before. But the challenge is to think of it more holistically and to exercise a muscle that historically dealers haven't, which is strategic thinking. And I think you need to be a lot more strategic about it. You need to be a lot more deliberate about it. And you do need to take advantage of the technology and, at the very least, understand it. If you don't understand it, how can you make a business decision? I mean, you have to take the time and effort to do that. And I think if you do that, there are many, many changes that are coming, but you know what? They'll be able to handle them, and they'll still be around doing what they do really well, which is working with customers.
Well, that's really what it's all about, right? I remember when we went from, gosh, hand. I know I'm talking a long time ago, but handwriting that menu to automating the menu, and dealers were thinking, "Oh my God, we got this great, Becky. We now have an automated menu, and boy, is that going to make life easier?" And it did. Automating that menu meant no more mistakes trying to calculate these payments and trying to figure out different rates for service contracts and our ancillary products. We didn't have to look up the rates in a book and try to calculate it, via our DMS, and then trying to figure out the payments on a menu. Now it was completely automated. So that meant faster, better. And because it was a lot more efficient. We were a lot more credible. And when you're a lot more credible, you're a lot more confident. When you're confident, you're more credible, and then more higher performance. It just all goes hand in hand. And that's where we are today, really.
The difference is, you're talking about something from 25 years ago. That change was very gradual and happened over a long period of time.
Just seemed like it happened overnight.
If that happens nowadays, what you're going to find is, usually in metro areas, the people that have created whatever the technology is, they'll look at perfecting it in the metropolitan areas, usually because that's where the people are. But once they perfect it, the ability to spread it is like, boom. it happens really fast. So you can go from this is no big deal to this is a requirement in your particular situation overnight. Someone else in a metro, they may see it coming if they take the time to look. But the key is these changes are going to happen, and they're going to happen faster because the systems are so much more capable. I mean, 25 years ago, you were not talking to your car, okay? You just weren't. And now you are. It's weird. And that is going to continue. And, you know, I think people that sit around and say, oh, that's not going to happen here, or that's not good for my customers, they're doing themselves and their customers a disservice. The very least, they should know about it, and they should look at it and be able to judge and anticipate when it's going to come to them. It isn't a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And if you anticipate it and you take the time to understand it, hey, guess what? The transition, the transformation for you will be almost seamless if you're ready for it. If you're not, you're going to get hit in the head with it. And the reality is, it's not just one thing. It's not just the menu or this or that. It's going to be 6 things that are going to hit you in the head all at the same time.
Amen.
And if
It really
haven't
is.
looked ahead, if you haven't taken the time, so
I've definitely
that's what I would urge people to do.
I simplified it by that, but there's a lot more happening now, from online to in dealership, from in dealership to desking, from desk sales, desking to, I mean, to finalizing the transaction and F&I to service to it all. I mean, there's so many different moving component, and you got to embrace it. Got to get your head wrapped around it. You know, I think that if dealers, like you said, just take the time to critically review their process, they will find, if anything, so many inefficiencies. And again, if that doesn't help, I mean, that should help a lot, right? To just cut through some of those inefficiencies so you can make the greater impact with every deal that you can get.
Well, think if you could cut your cost by 30%. And in many cases, when you go into a dealership and you take a look at all the inefficiencies, you can.
Yeah.
Just by cutting out the time, getting it more accurate, you don't miss as many things. You don't have as many things that blow up on you and you get audited for, you know, all of these things add up. And I think, honestly, they have the time. I don't think that, I mean, people talk about change accelerating, and it is, but I don't think like EV and the systems and all these things are going to happen overnight. It's not going to be like, today it's not there, you need to be ready tomorrow. You have a ramp up time, okay? You know about it. It's not a secret. You know there are millions and billions of dollars being invested into this. Trust me, it's going to happen. Nobody puts that kind of money into something and then goes, nah, we're not going to do that. You know, so they are. So accept that and say, okay, I don't want to fight it. I want to understand how to embrace it. I want to understand how to get my organization in the right shape, with the right skill set, the right people, the right understanding, so that I can benefit from it. And more importantly, my customers can. And if you do that, and I urge you to do that quickly and soon to start that process, I think you'll be in far, far better shape. Because if you look at the guys that never accepted the menu, they lost a lot of money. The guys that did, because they didn't accept the change. And the longer you wait, the more expensive it gets. And with the kind of speed of technological change that's going on, you get to a point nowadays where you're too far behind to catch up. The digital space has grown too much, and the sheer cost of catching up exceeds your ability to do that. Whereas if you're paying for it as you go along and you're improving your profitability and you're growing as you move, essentially a lot of that change is covered. It pays for itself. But if you wait and then all of a sudden it's a big deal, trust me, it's a multi-million-dollar mistake. And there aren't a lot of dealerships sitting around that can survive that kind of a mistake. So it's just something to think about. And yeah, and I'm happy to help anybody and communicate with them and, you know, talk to them and take a look at it. I've seen thousands of dealerships over the years. I've watched a lot of changes, watched a lot of adjustments. It was funny, the other day I was talking to a dealer. I saw him in Automotive News, Dick Fitzpatrick up in Connecticut. That was my first zone as a zone manager. It was 40 years ago I talked to him. And, we talked, and they helped train me in the business, they and the other dealers in that zone. And, I can't ever repay what they did and what they helped me do. But it's so great to see that they've succeeded and they've made the changes and made the adjustments. And when I talk to him, he's turning it over to the next generation, and they're already thinking differently about it than he did. And he said that. He said, yeah, he goes, I made a lot of changes. I did a lot of things that I had to do to keep us going. But my daughter and my son-in-law, they really see and understand the technology, and they're looking at the future. And he goes, I'm so glad that I'm able to leave that to them, and that they have something to now build on, and to keep the family legacy going. So
I think
cool.
where you're going with the technology piece, I hope the dealers understand it's not to push technology down somebody's throat. But we know that if we partner with and have a better understanding of what that technology will do within our own workflow. Too many times you get that technology and you're thinking, man, this is it. This is going to make a huge difference. How many dealers bought through DR tools and then realized nothing really happened? And it was a workaround for the rest of the team. I don't know what this dealer, what he got, he got a bill of goods, and, it was at his NADA 20 group. And oh my God, he came up with this crazy thing. He has no idea what he's doing. So it turned out to be just another workaround. But
there are a lot of things. There are a lot of things. I've talked to a lot of small companies, a lot of new and up and coming companies. I've been on different panels with guys. There are some really outstanding ideas for service, ideas for sales that can be really, really beneficial. The challenge is, don't just buy the latest shiny thing. Have a team that is organizing this and developing this so that it all works together, that the information flow is seamless between sales and service, between service and parts, between sales and F&I. All these things need to be seamless, and the technology's there to do that. And a lot of these companies that are creating these ideas are guys that have taken a single idea that was something that was terrible and they fixed it. Great. That's one fix. The problem is you need to have the whole thing work together. So making sure you pull in the right training guys, the right, technology at the right time is critical. And I think the dealers have the abilities to do it. I really do. I think they have the opportunity to do it. I truly hope that, that they take the time now to do it, because it's going to be really, really challenging. And I see Peter Fong is on.
Hey, Peter, my first real boss at Ford Motor Company. Do I not get the best one? Peter, I'm going to bring you on too. Just telling you.
Yeah. He's excellent.
I met with Peter at gosh, where was it? Oh, at a party at True Warranties party, Peter, and he promised he'd come on the live talk with me. So look at you. But my first real boss at Ford Motor Company when I was fresh out of the Navy, seasoned veteran in auto. Yay.
Yeah, no, Peter's a great guy. I've known him for a long time. And, all credit to him. When he came on, he was a fantastic employee. So I was happy to have him on the team, believe me.
Well, look at where he's at today. You obviously did something right there, Stephen.
Well, you should definitely have him on. He's another guy that's thinking out of the box, and he works for Orbi, and that's another great organization to take a look at and a system to take a look at. But it really is important to fit these things together. And it seems to me now's the chance. I mean, Brian took the opportunity during COVID because that was a big crisis, but you still have supply chain issues. You still have, chips and various things coming and going and up and down. And so you're still in a crisis. You still have an opportunity to take advantage of it, and to make some of the changes. And again, a lot of guys think these are earth-shattering changes. They are not. Okay, they are basic fundamentals. Just take the time to do it, and don't make up the excuse of, oh, I'm too busy, I don't have enough time, or that's like saying, we can't afford to do training because we don't have enough time for it. Yeah, you can't afford not to do it. So that's the bottom line.
I've heard that one. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? I believe in training in real time, Becky. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
we'll get him when he's, when they're in real time, when it's all happening, not in that workshop space. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that's when they're in the deep end of the pool and you hand them an anchor. Here you go. Go ahead. Swim now.
Have fun with that one, why don't we? But yeah, it gets interesting, that's for sure. Well, before we leave, do you have any last minute thoughts you'd like to share with our dealers and viewers?
Not anything that we haven't really covered. I would say that EVs are coming. They're going to be a great opportunity for dealers, and they're going to be a great challenge for dealers. Okay. A lot of the technology that's coming is the same thing. For all of these challenges, they represent huge opportunities. Take the time. And again, as I said, sometimes it's not a bad thing to have somebody from the outside come in and just take a look. Honestly, you can get any consulting group you want, but they can come in for relatively little money and give you some insight that you can't see because you're in the forest looking at the trees from 2 feet away. Sometimes it's not a bad thing to get a bigger view, take a more strategic approach, help you start the process, and then you can take it from there. I mean, once you get the motion going, once you get your leadership team lined up, I do think you'll find, just like Brian did, there'll be all of a sudden you'll go, wow, we're not losing this money. We're not doing that. We're not going here. We're not. Duh.
He took the initiative. He really did. He had to put his foot down. He mentioned because the GM, but he took on the risk too.
And he brought people in. He didn't have all the information himself. He brought people in. He brought guys come in to evaluate his tech stack. He had guys come in to evaluate different things. And then he used that information and he made the changes. And to be honest, that is leadership. Okay. That's what a leader is supposed to do. They're supposed to look around the corner. They're supposed to be thinking about their people. They're supposed to be, looking at the things that could potentially come along and hurt them, and be in a position to help them step out of the chaos for a little while and take advantage of some of this stuff. Because if they don't apply that leadership now, they're really going to get hurt. And I have a lot of friends who are dealers, and they have a lot of good people working for them. There are a lot of families that depend on dealerships being successful. So I urge them, take the time. If you have questions and you want to talk to me, I'm happy to talk to any of you. You got the number down there. Give me a call. I'm happy to talk to you. But take some action. Don't just sit there, because it's coming, guys. It's not if, it's when.
So. I love it. I like it. It's happening. It's here. It's now. And you have a lot of great comments tonight here, Stephen, Tony. Great show tonight, and really great information, Stephen, as you always do. And I'm so grateful that you were able to be on tonight. David, thank you so much. Where there is chaos, there is opportunity, right?
Yes.
Figured you'd like that one. And then Peter mentioned he's got to go, he's got to call, he's got to bounce, but he's going to reach out to Becky, and we'll get him on live talk with Becky Chernek too. And I'm sure he has a lot to share with us when it comes to what they do. And look who just came in to say hello, our Don Brady. Now here's a man on the go. He does not quit, not for a second. He's always everywhere. So Don, thank you so much for coming in to say hi. We we love you. We think the world of you. I know I do, and I know Stephen does as well. So
Yes.
I want to thank everyone as well for taking the time to be here on my show, The Live Talk with Becky Chernek. And if there's anything you'd like to have more information on, just let me know. And certainly you can contact me as well at chernekconsulting.com, 866-894-1899. And, I work, in the trenches, sales, desking, and F&I development. So Stephen and I just go hand in hand. So if there's anything there that I can do to support you guys, feel free to reach out to me as well. We have one more comment here. We have Chris. Thank you, guys. Great show, Chris. Thank you so much for being on tonight, and appreciate your questions as well. And I got to tell you, Stephen, he knocks it out of the park every time. And I can't thank you enough, Stephen, for being on tonight. And thank you guys so much. You make it a great week. Thank you, Stephen.